Welcome in, everyone, to the Crowded Booth here on a Thursday night. Not your typical time to talk, but we got a special calendar of events, and we'll talk about it to start the show. What a week in the Koon household of just two tow trucks, a Facebook scam, and just a Facebook Marketplace scam. It's been a wild time. So where does it leave us? We're a one-car household without a kitchen table. That's where it leaves us, and we can't wait to talk to you on tonight's episode of the Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.
His name is Will Mannis. My name is Bryce Koon. We welcome you into the Crowded Booth here on a Thursday night. Just, I guess, Will, what are we, 4 or 5 days away from the penultimate, the final game of the 2024 college football season. I know it runs into 2025, but I don't, just for confusion purposes and rock dweller purposes, let's just call it the 2024 season. Your feelings, Will, as we embark on what is the final time and what should be we'll talk about it tonight, what should be a fun game between two massive brands and this playoff that I'm just so glad this 12-team playoff brought us to a point where we get to see some of the underdogs really fight for a chance to win the title.
Well, the normal thing to say would be to get sentimental and say, oh, it's gone by so fast. Can't believe it's over. It's January 16th. The season should already be over. That's part of it with the college football playoff, expanding to 12, which in the days off, I've actually changed my mind a little bit on the 12-team playoff. But
Okay.
It's, to me, one of the downsides of it is how long it goes. I think it's kind of crazy that it's January 16th and we still got to play the national championship game. A little long for me, but
Yeah.
the last 4 years have been long years for me. So, but it's been a great playoff. Of course, Will's ready for next season. Yep, Matt, always looking forward, never looking back. Excited for Jackson Arnold.
Why?
3 minutes and 15 seconds.
Just vibes?
If you're in the Discord, you know where that comment comes from.
Yes. Yeah, you're well aware.
But it's been a great playoff. And I think, at least at the moment, these are the two best teams in the country, and they're going to play for the national title, and I think very deservedly so.
Yeah, and I think that, this 12-team playoff, and I was joking, being facetious, it's a joke, everyone, about the idea that this gave us, two teams that hadn't been here before. I mean, I know Notre Dame's been a while, but Notre Dame's no stranger to the top of the college football world. Neither is Ohio State. And like we saw, like the dominant programs, your top-tier programs will probably rise to the top once, even no matter how you expand it. You might get some Cinderella runs, but it is what it is. Ohio State, Notre Dame. Before we jump into this, though, awesome news that popped out. We knew about this last week, popped out into this week. Will made the fantastic banner down there. Look, I've said this, and you're going to hear the promo here in just a second. Believe Network's been great. We've started that partnership back in actually June, and my wife and I had the baby, and I think we did like literally 2 episodes in the month of June that actually had like some of the Believe Network stuff on there because it was just chaotic. But all throughout the football season, they liked what they saw out of what we were doing. And so obviously kicking off 2025, got this new deal with Underdog Fantasy, which will, for people who want to, and I'll say this, people who want to dip their toes into the sports fantasy world, I mean, look, I think Underdog Fantasy is a pretty simplistic way to start out that journey.
Well, I'll go a step further. Underdog's the best place to do it and the best way to do it. Player props only. You're not betting on the game. You're just betting on player performance.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. And I don't have it pulled up. Maybe you have it pulled up. Well, I think we should take a look at some of these underdog lines for the national title game as we talk about it tonight. But you see the banner, the ticker down there. Sign up for Underdog Fantasy with promo code CROWDED, get a free pick and up to $1,000 in bonus cash.
Some of you have already taken advantage of that, by the way.
You can't beat bonus cash, no matter where
it's free
you're
money.
getting it from.
It's free money. So look, we did as best job we could. Will, I think that's a great idea. Pull up some of the lines. We'll take a look at that towards the end of the show. But here's all the things you need to know if you want to get involved. And if you think you know ball, we know ball. And we're not afraid to say that. So if you think you do, come compete against. Tired of the old, outdated way of playing fantasy? It's time to try Underdog Fantasy. If you want to make some picks on your favorite sports, check out Underdog Fantasy Pick'em game, where you choose higher or lower on between 2 to 8 players, and you can win up to 1,000 times your initial entry. Make sure to use code CROWDED when you sign up, so you can get up to $1,000 in bonus cash and a free pick. Think you know ball better than us? Don't miss out on this great offer and compete against the crew to showcase your knowledge today. Underdog Fantasy, make sure you do that. We'll take a look at some of those. We'll pull those up. We'll take a look at some of those towards the end of the show. And Will, I mean, look, if you want to, look, just walk and talk about what you would take. Since you're in the great state, 33 states that Underdog's available, you're in the great state of Georgia where Underdog is available. No comment. Plead the fifth on my state. But we will we'll continue to talk about that later on. Alex says he knows ball because I'm winning the bowl thing. I'm gonna be honest, Alex. Once I set that up, I haven't looked at it once. But Alex, I might get you a T-shirt. We might get you some type of T-shirt, some type of thing for that. All right, Will. Kind of have a layout of the show here tonight. You take a look right now. Ohio State, and I imagine this is per Believe's friends and our friends over at Bet Online, -8.5. The over/under at 46.5 in this contest. And look, we kind of saw these lines, and I believe we talked about it last Thursday, like the hypothetical lines on who would advance and who would win, or last Wednesday with the show. It really kind of strikes me as this is a game where Ohio State comes in, and we'll talk about this here in a second. I'll go ahead and move over there. The national championship storylines. And it's kind of more back and forth. We can talk matchups. I think the biggest thing is, and I wanted to ask you this because I did an episode that aired this morning. We recorded it yesterday from the Notre Dame perspective. Brian Driscoll, Irish breakdown. They do a great job over there of not just talking about the news cycle, but really breaking down a lot of stuff. And he brought up something that I thought, and I posted on social, was really, I don't want to say impactful, but just from, not covering Notre Dame, you don't really think about it as much. And I said, what does Notre Dame have to do to win this game? We'll talk about that later, but it was just do what you do. And I feel like there's a lot of conversation that, Ohio State's going to run away with this. And look, we might come to the end of this game and the end of this show and might say, hey, we think the Buckeyes win by double digits. But I think there is an aspect to this of the growth of Notre Dame's program. And we've mentioned this when they played Georgia, just the athleticism. Like if you didn't watch them the whole year, what they bring to the table. This isn't the same Notre Dame program that got blown out by Alabama 15 years ago. This isn't the same, Notre Dame team that got beat by Clemson, I think, in 2017, 2018. So this is a team that I think when you look at what they bring to the table, it's like, I kind of agree with Brian. Like something otherworldly does not have to happen for Notre Dame to win this game. Does that mean they'll win? Does it mean they're favored? No. Wanted to get your thoughts on that assessment because I think that's just the casual observer comes in saying, well, Ohio State and Notre Dame's constantly this team that's like, yeah, they're good, but they can't compete with the elites. I think that narrative, and like Brian said on the show earlier, I think that's pretty dead, I feel like, at this point.
Yeah, I think so too. And we've been kind of beating that drum all year long that Notre Dame is not built like the Notre Dame of 15 years ago. They are built like a Power 5, Power 2, Power 4, whatever you want to call it now, program. I mean, you look at their 2 deep, their blue chip ratio. You can laugh at those numbers all you want to, but it matters. And it's a great measuring stick of how programs match up against each other, especially programs in different conferences. And Notre Dame is right up there near the top. They've been really good all year, minus the Northern Illinois game. And ever since that game, they have just basically steamrolled everybody. In their last 10 games, they're 10-0 against the spread. So not only are they winning, they're doing it in style, really, and putting it on teams. But it's like I said, in the open, that these are the 2 best teams in the country right now, and that's what an expanded playoff has gotten us to. And say what you want about the initial 12. It's worked itself out, and these 2 teams are the best right now.
Yeah. I think, too, you could take a step further. You really dive into some of the stats, and I know we've got a spreadsheet here that we were kind of working off of. two of the top defenses, left, not just in the playoff, but in the country. I mean, with what you have. And there's a lot of different matchups and storylines. I just think, and look, it might happen, Will. Ohio State feels like the buzzsaw right now, just for any team that plays them. And I said this last week, I don't know if anybody's going to be able to beat Ohio State. What I don't want to happen coming out of this game, and it's going to happen because it's the casual take, is that Notre Dame they weren't as good as we thought they were. Well, what does that mean? They reached the national title game in a 12-team playoff. And if you go back 7 or 8 months, Will, this is what we expected Ohio State to be. So how do you counter that? Like when the dust settles, and it's going to happen because that's how social media and college sports talk, in general works. Where do you sit on that? Like, if Ohio State wins this game by, let's just say, 13 points, is it an indictment of Notre Dame and what they maybe are not? Or is it more of just who Ohio State is and probably who they really have been all year outside of a miserable day in Ann Arbor?
It's definitely more of who Ohio State is. It's not an indictment at all against Notre Dame. And we've already talked about the spread, Ohio State being an 8.5-point favorite. They're a strong favorite, a heavy favorite in this game. They're expected to win this game and win it fairly comfortably with a spread that big. But Notre Dame, they, like you said earlier, do what they do. I mean, it's not pretty. It's not flashy. It's really, at least offensively, the opposite of what Ohio State does. And you talk about Ohio State being the buzzsaw. We'll talk more about it in a little while. We talk about why Ohio State could win. They have incredible weapons, incredible playmakers. And we'll get more into each position and compare them later, or at least I've got some comments on that.
Yeah.
You look at Ohio State's too deep. They've got the advantage at every position. That's, I think, the big storyline, but it's been talked about a lot, especially in the playoffs. Notre Dame's been able to overcome that. You've talked at length about how well coached this Notre Dame team is. They don't beat themselves. That's what makes them so hard to beat, on top of just the way they play. They're just going to grind the game down to a halt. That's why the over-under is only at 46.5. A lot of that has to do with Notre Dame's defense. And when they have the ball, they like to hold on to it. They run the football as good as anybody. It's just, it's going to be difficult for Notre Dame, I think, in this game. And the spread shows that, but it's like we said about a lot of games. We could see either team. I mean, there's legitimate paths for both teams to win this game.
A noted college football podcaster did say the other day that, and I believe it might have even been going into the semifinal game about Notre Dame, and you mentioned this is a great storyline. The only game Notre Dame has not forced a turnover in, Will, is the Northern Illinois game. And this idea that, well, I don't know if they can keep doing it against, so-and-so or team X or team Y. Well, you're 15 games into your schedule. The outlier is probably the Northern Illinois game than the fact that you, for 14 games, you forced turnover. And I like what you said as well. And I think that's what makes this game interesting than just looking at a box score or looking at a spread, because you have to factor in the human element. Marcus Freeman is an elite head coach. He has graduated into, I think, maybe the tier 2, and some people may have him in the tier 3 of coaches. We'll have those rankings and talk about that next month. But I don't remember. I don't think I had him in my top 10, and now he's going to be up there for me, at least.
He's interviewing. Allegedly, he's interviewing for the Chicago Bears job. I mean, a 1-year rise like that is really incredible. And his style is. Being so far away kind of seems abnormal, but I'm not sure how abnormal it is. I mean, he just, as college football coaches, head coaches across the board, he might be the most intentional, I think. I mean, you watch him talk, whether it's post-game with the reporter, post-game press conferences during the week. He really thinks long and hard about what he says and the way he says things. And like you said, human element. They play for him. There's no doubt about it, and that's why they've gotten here. You talk about the turnovers. They had the only game they didn't force a turnover in was Northern Illinois. Their turnover margin this year is 17, plus 17, compared to Ohio State's 4. We talk about how can they win this game? They're going to have to turn them over. It's really shocking how these two teams square off against each other, just with your basic common stats. I'll read them
Yeah.
off. Points per game: Ohio State 37.4, Notre Dame 38.5. Opponents' points per game: Ohio State 12.2, Notre Dame 14.3. Total yards per game: Ohio State 428, Notre Dame 405. Passing yards per game: Ohio State 265, Notre Dame 194. Rushing yards per game: 163 for Ohio State, 210 for Notre Dame. Yards per play: Ohio State 6.9, Notre Dame 6.4. This is kind of scary. Third down percentage: Ohio State 41%, Notre Dame 41%. Fourth down percentage: Ohio State 71%, Notre Dame 73%. You know, you can't argue. I don't think that you can argue that these are the two best teams in the country on January 16th.
Yeah. No, and what they've done to this point, they both have earned the right to be there. You have two teams that I feel like, and I'll say this, regardless of what happens Monday night, I think Notre Dame's probably been the most consistent team in college football all year, just week in, week out. And what I mean in terms of that is, you've said this a lot, Will, like, let's say you play 12 games, just 12 regular season games. The idea is let's play the best version of ourselves and see how many times we can get that out of 12 opportunities. And I feel like when you look at some of the results, and you can talk about schedule, whatever you want to talk about, you still have to control what you do. Notre Dame's done a good job of that. They've controlled what they have done. So I like what you said there. The human element has to be taken to effect here. It's why I'm not just screaming from the rooftops, Ohio State's going to win this game by 17 points or plus. We'll talk about what would have to happen for why. But any other storylines, any other things that you're looking at that just kind of pique your interest kind of before we dive into what has to happen for each team to emerge victorious?
Maybe the big key in this game is going to be, how does Notre Dame's secondary, which has been very good all year, we talked about it last week going to that Penn State game, how do they match up against, this just insane wide receiver room for Ohio State? How can they do like Texas and basically take Jeremiah Smith out of the game, which is really, I think, why that game was so close.
Was it one catch for 3 yards that he had in that game?
It.
Yeah.
That was it. I mean, but the crazy part is, look at who's behind him: Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate. Both those guys would be number one receivers on any other team in the country. I mean, they are number one guys on the outside. So can Notre Dame do that? I think that's going to be the biggest question mark, and is going to be the difference in this game, at least on Notre Dame's, from their perspective, if they're going to be able to win this game.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. And it carries us right into the first team. We'll take a look at why Ohio State wins this game. So Ryan Day kind of getting the proverbial monkey off his back here and winning first national title for him. I believe the 9th national title for Ohio State.
What's a bigger monkey off his back, winning the national title or getting Lou Holtz off his back?
Ooh,
that's not a storyline I brought up, but that might be the biggest one.
That's pretty. That's pretty in depth. I think that's worth that's worth an episode by itself. Is the Lou Holtz Ryan Day saga? No, in all seriousness, I just will never forget. I think I don't remember where I was when I saw like the thing on Twitter come across, and I was in a group text with you guys, and I think like either Ralph sent it or you sent it, and I was like, wait, what? Like what's going on? Like, and Ryan Day trying to berate, and I mean, I don't know how old Lou Holtz is. High 80s, low 90s. I mean, I have no idea.
He's in his late 80s.
Late 80s. I mean, yeah, we're just. I like how I've talked about Lou Holtz's age like a golf score. High 80s, low 90s, or something like that. No, it's late or early there, pal. Okay, why Ohio State wins in this game? Well, I want to start off with this one right now because I think this is something where these teams are going to converge in Atlanta, and just right off the bat, like I'll just say this. I think Ohio State has the talent advantage. Now we'll get into, the Notre Dame side of things, but I think Ohio State has the talent advantage. And I think with Notre Dame's 2 injuries, 2 guys they're not going to have along the offensive line in this game because they've gotten injured during the playoffs, it really gives a leg up to this front 7. And Jim Knowles has done a complete revitalization job of Ohio State's defense, a remake, whatever you want to call it, in terms of the time span. I believe this is his 3rd season in Columbus. He's done a fantastic job, changed the identity of what Ohio State has been. And I think it's just been this team that, hey, we know they can air it out, but could they just get that one stop? Well, they're not, and you talked about a lot of the numbers, they're not just getting one stop, they're stopping you, and you can't do a lot. So you bring in the aspect of Riley Leonard in this whole thing. Riley Leonard's not the most. Riley Leonard's. I don't want to clip here. Riley Leonard's not the most. He doesn't strike fear into you as an opponent. I would argue he is dynamic in his ability to just create plays. Not in sense like he's going to run a 4-4 past you or anything like that, but his ability to play make is something that if you kind of let that avalanche get going, you can't stop it. So Ohio State, to me, you got to control that. You got to get pressure. He will throw the ball and put it in harm's way if you do that. We saw that kind of in the Penn State game at times. Like when they got pressure, that can happen. The next part of this is, and you talk about it, Ohio State Chip Kelly has to find a way, and this is probably the biggest thing. If Ohio State does this, they win the football game. You got to get Jeremiah Smith the ball early and often. You have to establish that connection with Will Howard, because I think that could start to put a Notre Dame defense that is very, very good on its heels a little bit, to where now, you can't just cut off one side of the field, because obviously you have talent everywhere. But now if that gets going early and often, then it's, okay, we've got to watch out for him. We've got to watch out for the other two receivers. Oh, don't forget about the two, really talented backs they got in the backfield. It becomes really a mind game in the eyes of, Notre Dame's defensive staff and Marcus Freeman, to where it's
I'm going to go the other way.
It's pick your poison. It could be.
I'm actually going to go the other way. I think Ohio State has to run the ball.
That's fair.
Because Notre Dame's front seven has been so good in these playoffs against the run, and really all season. I mean, Penn State ran it pretty well on them. I mean, they ran it really, really well on them, I should say. Like Nick Singleton got 15 carries, 84 yards, 3 touchdowns. Katron Allen, 19 carries, 82 yards. But Texas was able to kind of limit the run game. I mean, obviously the big screen pass right before halftime was a big play for TreVeyon Henderson, but or maybe it's because I expected more from TreVeyon Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, and maybe I expected too much from them.
Yeah.
Notre Dame defensively number 5 in EPA against the run and number 53 in success rate against the run. So there's certainly opportunity there. Big for that defense missing Riley Mills in the defensive line. That's going to be a huge loss. If Ohio State can get the run game going, that'll help take the pressure off Will Howard, and that's part of the reason why he played poorly against Texas. Or I'd say poorly, but
didn't have his best game.
24 of 33, 289 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. If he's got to throw the ball 30 times, it's going to be a tight game, I think. I mean, and I want to talk about both of these quarterbacks. Like you said, about Riley Leonard, he doesn't really strike fear. I don't really think Will Howard does either. I think Will Howard just has the best supporting cast in the country. I mean, the 3 receivers, the 2 running backs, great offensive line, and that hasn't really skipped a beat with all the injuries, like you already mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Just there's more talent around him, and that's why I think he really needs that run game to help him settle in, and maybe the game won't be on his shoulders if they can take shots and hit shots that they set up with the run game, like they've done most of the year. I think that's what both of these teams just kind of have to do what they do to win this game. I think it's for both teams. They're going to want to do what they normally do. I think it's a good matchup against the other side. Partially due to the injuries, mainly Riley Mills for Notre Dame. I think that's why it's an advantage for Ohio State. But you look on the flip side at Notre Dame, I think what they do offensively and even defense, it's so hard to pick this game because, like I said, these are the 2 best teams right now. Notre Dame's secondary is great. I think they can limit the receivers.
And that's without a top 15 pick in Benjamin Morrison in that group too. Like they've got depth. They're pretty good.
Yeah, that's true. So I think Ohio State wins this game because of the opportunities in the run game. Get TreVeyon Henderson, get Quinshon Judkins going early, take that pressure off Will Howard, and try to hit some deep shots. That's going to be tough against had their names. Of course, lost them. The Notre Dame safety, Schuler. Was it Aaron Schuler? Is that his first name?
I
Or am I
think so.
butchering it? Probably butchering it. And Xavier Watts. I know it's Xavier
Watts is good. Well, and I'll add this to it. I went back and watched
Aiden Schuler. Sorry,
Aiden Schuler. I went back and watched the Texas Ohio State game, and I want to give credit where credit's due here. Not that they need it from me. I think you have to say, like, you being real yourself, like Texas's defensive game plan worked in that game, and they played a lot of zone. They dropped some linebackers to help out, and they bracketed Jeremiah Smith. Like, he just didn't get a lot of opportunities. And I think we're going to see, to a certain extent, Notre Dame's going to try to emulate that. And I would. Like, I think Texas did a good job. They gave themselves a chance to hang around with them with their own offensive struggles. I think they're going to try to challenge Jeremiah Smith. That's the physicality of the secondary for Notre Dame has to be really good in this game. But I think when you talk about just what Ohio State has, you say the run game, and maybe I'm cheating here. I think Ohio State wins just because it's pick your poison. Good as I think Notre Dame is defensively, I just don't know. And I think there has to be something said, Will, about the fact that, every single coach in America says this, but you want your team playing the best ball at the end of the season. There's not a greater example of that than Ohio State right now. I mean, they've not just been good, Will, they have been elite. The Texas game maybe wasn't what they wanted, but they've been really, really, really dang good in these two games. And so I think, we talk about the stats. There's got to be something to the confidence and a little bit of the swagger that this team has coming into this game. I also think, and I'll put it on the other side of the football for you, this is a championship level defense with playmakers at all three levels, guys that can change the game, and a guy that I don't think gets a ton of necessarily, and I'm going to butcher his name here if I don't. I got it right here. Lathan Ransom, who's not a really big name in terms of when you think about the Ohio State defense, right? But he evaded two blockers in a sequence in that Texas game, knocked back Wisner, the running back from Texas, for a 7-yard loss, put him behind the chains, which kind of led to just a game-changing moment. And you just have guys that just step up. Yeah, everyone knows who Caleb Downs is. We know who Jack Sawyer is. We know who, and I'm not going to say his name because I'll butcher it, JT, the Edge. We know who that is. But,
Tui Molowau.
Look at that. That's why you're here. But we know that they have playmakers, but I think it's just the cohesiveness that Jim Knowles has this group playing with. So I'll cheat again. I think Ohio State wins it because there's too many weapons offensively. And I just think that they are probably, and I hate to say this because I love Notre Dame's defense, I think they're probably the best 11 players in terms of playing cohesively that we see in the country, like all year. Like, they're just, right now, it just does not feel like there's a lot that gets through, that leaks through with that defense.
I agree with you. I just don't see how Notre Dame can stop them. They're going to have to turn them over. I guess we can kind of move into why Notre Dame wins, because Notre Dame has to turn Ohio State over. Yeah. They have to. I think that's the only way. They got to steal some possessions. I mean, I think, like you said, they're going to emulate Texas's game plan, but that worries me some, because watching this defense and Al Golden, their defensive coordinator's DNA is aggressive. That's how they went out and beat Georgia. That's how they were able to beat Penn State. They were aggressive. They've done it all year. I don't think that they can stray away from that. I think that's worked really well to their advantage. Now, with Morrison being out, they may have to back off a little bit. And they probably have to back off a little bit just because of, like we talked about, Ohio State has too many weapons. Yeah. But the defense, they're going to have to get turnovers. Defense may have to score to keep them in this game and probably win this game. But offensively, I think we know what they're going to do. They're going to run the football, whether it's Jeremiah Love, where it's Aeneas Williams, the really talented freshman running back that, I was telling Gavin earlier, I thought I'd watched a ton of Notre Dame games this year, but I didn't know who he was until the playoffs started. He's kind of like burst onto the scene in the playoffs, and that shows you how little that I've watched Notre Dame probably. Or Riley Leonard, we know how good he is running the ball. So they're going to play ball control. They're going to try to run the ball, bleed clock, shorten this game. And that's what they're really good at. And like I said before, I think both of these teams can do what they normally do and it be a competitive game. It's really hard to pick out who has a clear advantage. But Notre Dame, they win because they turn Ohio State over 2, maybe 3 times. But with that, they got to be able to score when they turn them over. And that's really their only chance. They're going to have to steal possessions.
And I'll say this to the Notre Dame fan that's just clenching their fist hearing Will say that. They've done it all year. It's not some insurmountable, just idea that they can't do it, Will, because I think that, for me in this game, they need contributions in all 3 phases, right? And that may be just a cop-out answer when you talk about what you need in terms of to win a football game. You got to play pretty well on offense, defense, and special teams. They need that. They've done that all year. They have to sprinkle in, Will, and this is important to me for Riley Leonard to really keep an Ohio State defense honest. You got to sprinkle in, and Mike Denbrock, who I think has done a fantastic job with Riley Leonard as he's learned Riley Leonard, through the early portion of the season. You got to be able to throw the ball downfield at times, and that's something that if I'm a Notre Dame fan, it concerns me is how many of those can we hit? I don't want to put a number on it. I don't know if Underdog Fantasy's got it, but I'll say this. If Riley Leonard hits on, let's just throw over 5.5, like 6, passes of 15 to 20 yards or more, wouldn't surprise me to see the Irish in the fourth quarter with a lead because it's going to keep Ohio State's defense honest. They like to play aggressive as well with Jim Knowles and that group. So it's an element that we've seen so far, and I'll say this too, in the playoffs that Denbrock has pushed Leonard to do. So that's something that's a really interesting dynamic in this game for me. Just can you hit on some downfield passes? Because like you mentioned, we know what Jeremiah Love can do. Let's talk about this running back room in general, who, as I've watched and looked more about it, this is probably one of the best running back rooms that we're not talking about in the country in terms of Notre Dame, what they bring to the table. You have Jadarian Price, but when Jadarian Price wasn't working and Jeremiah Love was a little bit bottled up, who did they go to in that Penn State game? Aeneas Williams out of the backfield. So you've got guys that can do different things. And I sit there. I don't think you can out-athlete Ohio State. And Gavin says this. I wanted to go back to his, what receivers has Notre Dame had to stop this playoff run? I turned it into, when you look at the playmakers, he said Jordan Faison's getting strapped and Bo Collins is not even a threat. You kind of look about, the home run threat, Jaden Greathouse, who obviously, had the big return against Georgia. They've got weapons. I don't think they're going to out-athlete Ohio State. But what I think Mike Denbrock's good at, and they've done all year, is understanding, taking what this defense gives you, move methodically. But I don't think this is a game where Notre Dame's going to be able to sit and say, we're going to get 3 yards here, 4 yards here, 5 yards here, because when you condense the field, it kind of makes me nervous. They're going to have to hit. So, Will, I'll say if Riley Leonard hits on 6 passes or more, let's just go 6 passes of 15 yards or more, I would not be surprised to see this a ball game with 10 minutes left, in the game. Like this is maybe tied, maybe a 1 or 2 point lead. I think that they can. I think that's a key to success, hitting on some downfield passes to keep Ohio State's defense honest.
Yeah. If you agree with Bryce and you want to go to underdog and try to make a little money, Riley Leonard's passing yards is set at 172.5. Just go higher or lower. And Bryce, if he's able to do like you said, that's going over. I think. I mean, because we know they just take what the defense gives them. I think that's what makes Mike Denbrock a great offensive coordinator. I mean, you got to watch it firsthand at LSU, and he's done it all year this year at Notre Dame. Just taking what the defense gives you. I mean, quote David Pollack, his line that gets repeated 1,000 times a game in EA College Football 25. You never go broke taking a profit. That's what this Notre Dame offense does. But I'm with you. They're going to have to find a way to hit explosive plays. And Gavin says that Jordan Faison getting strapped. Bo Collins not even a threat. But Dr. Bob throwing out Mitchell Evans, a guy who I think has been very quiet. I mean, the potential's there for him to make some plays. Looking at underdog, they've got him set at 33.5 receiving yards.
Yeah.
And, compare that to Bo Collins. He's at 14.5. So There you go.
Well, and Evans is averaging 9.5 yards per catch this year. So it's a guy that
There's
they're
your
looking
explosive
at.
guy.
Yeah, there's your guy that can make some noise. And wouldn't that be surprising to see a Notre Dame tight end make an impact in the game? And it feels like tight end and offensive linemen have been the calling card over the past decade there for Notre Dame. But I do agree with that. And I think that in this game, Will, you mentioned it. The two things is the turnover battle has to be won. Here's another thing, though. Go back to that Penn State game. Now listen, Ohio State's offense is much more prolific, and that's the big reason when we get to the prediction part why I'm going to tell you what I think. But the third down brilliance, can they even come close to replicating that in what they did against Penn State? Offensively, they went 11 of 17 in that game. They allowed just 3 out of the 11 attempts from the Penn State offense. Not just the turnover margin, Will, but just getting off the field and sustaining drives. I mean, the blueprint for Notre Dame to win this, and you can catch the whole clip or go to that show. And I don't know if it's recency bias after talking with Brian about this, but just do what you do. And I know that Ohio State is probably different than anything you've ever faced, especially at this point with the way they're playing. But if you just do what you do and you dictate how you want to play, that's the path. That's the path how Notre Dame wins the game. Like, if they can dictate their style of play, what Denbrock wants to do offensively, what Freeman and this, Golden want to do defensively, if you can do that, then, I mean, hey, man, like that's how you win.
We've seen Notre Dame do it in the playoffs. Every game they played, they have forced their opponents to play the way they want to. Obviously the Georgia game, they got some really explosive plays in that middle 8 and, really turned up the pressure on them in the second half, playing their style. Penn State, I mentioned that Penn State was able to run the ball effectively on Notre Dame, run the ball pretty well. But watching that game, it felt like Notre Dame's game the whole time. Like Notre Dame was never really taken out of their game. And that's what they're going to have to do. I don't think that they can get into a track meet with Ohio State. I don't think they can score with them. So they're going to have to make this game ugly. They're going to have to drag down Ohio State with them. And to me, I think that's how they win this game.
I wanted to pull something up real quick because it feels like, and I want to make sure I get this right, that Notre Dame hit on some more big plays in that game against Penn State that maybe they hadn't been doing, and you mentioned that. So they had 4 passes, Will, from Riley Leonard that had gains of 15 yards more. And of course, you're going to have yards after catch and stuff like that. A 32-yarder to Mitchell Evans. I think we just mentioned that name. A 36-yarder to Aeneas Williams, a 17-yarder to Jaden Greathouse, and then the 54-yard pass that was a busted coverage to Jaden Greathouse for the touchdown as well. So they hit in 4 and beat Penn State. I'm up in the ante. I'm saying you got to hit 6 or more. That's where you got to hit 6 more, because then you really start to put some pressure on Ohio State's defense. And so that's where I sit with that. But yeah, any final things on why Notre Dame wins this game? And I feel like we got it. I mean, that's pretty well covered. Like what has to happen. Pretty well covered. I mean, we don't know anything, but that's what we did. All right. So before we get to our picks for the game, Will, do you still have our underdog? Some things that we could look at. Maybe you can screen share and tell people what they're rolling with. So obviously, if you don't know, and I'll play this while Will gets it ready real quick. This is how you can sign up. How do you deposit? If you don't know what you're doing, here's a little message on how you're doing, and we'll have our underdog picks right after this. All right, very easy. It's literally that simple. So Will's got a couple of the picks here. Will, are you going to lock these in? Where are you sitting with this? Walk me through some of what can fans take as they get ready, maybe for this game on Monday. I'll bring it up for you so you can keep. Oh, you got it. There we go. Let's see what we got.
So we'll start with the quarterbacks. Look at all these picks. I mean, what's that? 15 for Will Howard and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 18. Is my math right? I don't know. I don't know math. A lot of picks for the quarterbacks. that interception line only a half. I'm liking higher for
Higher on both.
both actually. I think both get picked off in this game. Where's Riley Leonard? Rushing touchdown.
Ooh.
I like
Okay.
the higher there for Riley Leonard. Punch one in from short. Passing yards, I'm not feeling that too much. Just you've got options. You've got options with underdog, that's for sure. A ton of picks here. Quinshawn Judkins got a lot of picks here. Longest reception, 6.5. What's Travion Henderson longest reception? He's got 2.5 receptions. Does he have the longest reception? He does, 11.5. I'm liking higher on that right there. Quinshawn Judkins, I don't know. It's interesting the running back.
How about Travion Henderson? Just a rushing touchdown. Like, I mean, that's how easy this is. Like, you could just say, I'm going. I think he gets one. Well, just hit higher, and you can make some money.
Yep. Jeremiah Love again, 43.5 rushing yards. I think I like the higher there. Aeneas Williams, 24.5 receiving yards. He's really their receiver out of the backfield.
Yeah.
Only 24.5. That looks like a good number to me. Jeremiah Smith, first quarter receiving yards, 18.5. Does he get off to a hot start? Longest reception, 30.5. Do they hit on a home run play? Bryce has said a couple times, I think they do. 21.5 longest reception for Emeka Egbuka. You've got a ton of options with underdog. I think that's the best thing. And look over here. Standard is 2 picks. You can flex your picks. So if you make 3, you go 2 out of 3, you still win. That's why you go to underdog.
It's good value.
You've got a lot of options. Mitch Jeter, been great in the playoffs. How many extra points is he going to make? How many kicking points, field goals?
I'm tempted.
Here's Ralph just talking about what nobody's talking about. You've got options with underdog. So go sign up. Promo code crowded. Get free pick. And you can use it on free. If I was going to use my free pick in this game, I would definitely take it on Travion Henderson.
Travion Henderson,
higher, half a touchdown.
That's what Will's locking it in. He's locking it in. I like it.
Pick.
Ralph said, "Can I bet on how many dubs?" It's not betting. It's taking higher or lower. All right.
Yeah.
Use the keywords. Use the keywords. Come on, pal. Read the marketing material. All right, that's our underdog pick. So make sure you get in on that. And look, it's not just college football. We're going to have that. Lock it in for the NFL playoffs. We've got the next round of NFL playoffs coming up. Obviously, you got NBA and then baseball not too far around the corner as well. As you know, too. Will's getting down to the trenches now, looking at some of those. Probably some of those NFL.
I am looking at some Chiefs Texans lines.
Ooh, I'm ready for that game. That's what
Patrick Mahomes, 277.5 passing plus rushing yards. Get on underdog.
Take advantage. All right, let's wrap it up right here. We're going to go who wins it all. First off, Will, I'm going to let you take it away here. Who wins this game? And we've kind of talked about why they would win this game. So you can just go by who you think wins the game.
Yeah, I don't really see. I really can't. It's hard to see a scenario where Ohio State does not win this game and doesn't cover 8.5. I feel good laying that 8.5. I just think this offense is too explosive. I think there's too many playmakers. Key injuries for Notre Dame on that defense is a killer for them in the secondary and the defensive line. So I'm going to take Ohio State. I don't know how you stop them. They're the hottest team in the country. And Ryan Day is going to get a couple monkeys off his back in this game, so to speak.
I've talked about this a lot. I think that one of the more intriguing, and I missed out on the storyline, so I'll say it here, is Ohio State's wideouts versus the sport's top passing efficiency defense in the country for the past 2 seasons. Mike Mickens does a great job with that Notre Dame secondary. So, yeah, the personnel's changed a little bit, but this is going to be essentially a deny my man type of thing. And I think it's going to be this is going to be one that scouts are going to be tuned into, obviously, but just in terms of putting on tape. Like if you want some good tape, here's best on best. What you do well, we do well. Let's see what happens. And that could make a lot of different money for kids rising and dropping on, and losing money in draft boards in April. So that's a big thing in this game. Gavin said this earlier, Will, and it kind of leads me to where I'm going with this, is talent shows up in big games only so much dogs, grit, culture, and determination can do. You mentioned the injury bug. Look, they've been dealing with injuries since about week 5, it feels like, and just in terms of what they've lost and what they don't have. The offensive line injuries make me nervous, and I think that the ability to get to Riley Leonard, which I will say this, the kid is a tremendous athlete. I don't want anyone to take away what Riley Leonard does. Have you seen the hoops highlights when he was playing over in Fairhope? It is ridiculous what he could do on the court. He's a good athlete. He evades some sacks. Can you do that over the course of 60 minutes? I think Ohio State is just the athlete. They might out-athlete Notre Dame at times, and I think Ohio State wins this one. But I'll take this. I think Ohio State wins this one by 10 or less. That's where I would feel comfortable putting this game. But I do want to paint the picture, folks. I love Notre Dame. I love what Marcus Freeman's been able to do. It just wouldn't shock me if they just come in and they just dictate what they want to do, because there is something about it. I know Gavin said you can only do so much, but with grit, determination, but man, that's what's got them there here. And it's not like they don't have talent. This is one of those talented Notre Dame teams we've seen in a very long time. I'm taking Ohio State to win this game. But man, I think it's going to be a good game. I'm saying the Buckeyes pull away with around 7-8 minutes left in the game. Like they just maybe get up to a 10-point lead, 11-point lead, and just can't come back. But it's going to be fun. I'm excited to watch it. I'm excited to sit down and watch on Monday night with it's a change of pace, but it's 2 big brand programs, and I think that's where it is. That's where it is. Awesome stuff.
I agree. I definitely agree. I think it'll be a 4-quarter game. But and how many times have we seen it in other sports? I mean, this is the largest playoff we've seen at this level of football.
Yeah.
I think we see it nearly every March and April in the NCAA basketball tournament. We see it kind of in the NFL, these Cinderella runs. You get to the end and you just kind of run out of gas. I'm worried for Notre Dame that's kind of the path that they're on. And then, not necessarily that they're not good enough, but I think the injuries are really going to hurt them in this game.
Yeah. We'll see. It's going to be fun. They love to play for Marcus Freeman. You can tell that, and that matters. You cannot count out the human element, but I do think Ohio State wins. So we're both taking the Buckeyes to win and cover that 8.5-point spread. I will end it with this. What do you like on the over-under? Do you think where do you sit with that? That's where to me, that's the harder decision to pick if you wanted to bet on this game.
I do too, but I like the over. 46.5, I like the over. And that's kind of where the total's been in Notre Dame's games, and they've been hitting the over.
Dr. Bob says, if Brian Day wins it all, does he stick to the Ohio State and leave for one of the NFL openings? Is
he a candidate for an NFL opening?
I don't know. Also, I want to throw it back because I didn't mention this when you said it. You said this, and this I quote. You said, well, allegedly, Marcus Freeman is interviewing for the Bears job. And it made me laugh because it's not supposedly, it's allegedly. Like being the head coach of the Bears is some like felony or misdemeanor. Like it's something that you think you don't want to be the head coach for the Bears. So he's allegedly going to interview. No, it's awesome. It's good stuff.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if you've been following the NFL coaching carousel, but there's been a ton of rumors. There's been a ton of posts. I mean, it's weird that this is where we're at in 2025, that teams are making tweets and making announcements that they've completed an interview with head coach X. Or with Coach X. I mean, that is
Coach Rex if you're New York Jets. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's it's just wild. So I haven't done enough research to know if that's true, if the Bears really are interested in interviewing him, but wouldn't be a surprise. There has been some buzz with his name for these NFL openings, so it wouldn't surprise me, but I haven't done a ton of research to find out how legitimate it is.
And hey, Bill Belichick reportedly, and I don't know if it's changed, has not signed his contract with UNC, which I don't know if that changed in the meantime. But since we're going live, I have no clue. But I saw where that apparently is true. That's crazy. That's nuts.
But I've read that that's normal, that most coaches don't have a signed contract.
There was some. Well, Sharon Moore. Remember, Sharon Moore didn't have a signed contract for a decent amount of time
at all.
At all. So just what?
No, but the Bill Belichick thing. What makes it weird is that $10 million buyout that expires like June 1st.
Just in time for training camp.
An NFL job, if he doesn't have a contract, does he have to pay it? I mean,
I'd say, it's good stuff to talk about, and we'll be talking about it all starting next Tuesday into the off season when we enter and talk college football. Everything from SEC team rankings, SEC quarterback rankings, ACC quarterback rankings. Will I put DJU at number 1 again? Probably not. Oh, that was wild. And ACC team rankings heading into spring football, then to summer, and then media days, and then just a lot of great stuff. And so it's gonna be fun. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. When we go live, you set up those notifications, and when we post the latest content over on our social media pages, all of that at the Crowded Booth. Shout out to Believe, shout out to Underdog Fantasy. Once again, make sure you use promo code CROWDED. You get your free pick and up to $1,000 of bonus cash. We're running this deal through about middle to late February, so kind of through the rest of football season. So make sure you take advantage. You get free money, folks. I mean, like it's free. Like it is what it is. So it'll be interesting. Gavin says slide to the bar. Man, I wish we had it. I so wish we had it. We will. I
can get it.
You can get it.
Can I flash?
Why not? Why not? Just flash it one time.
Hold on.
That sounded weird. That's going to get clipped.
Yeah, relax.
I didn't want to get this comment because we didn't say. I don't know. Y'all talked about this earlier, but people were talking down on Indiana when they lost to Notre Dame in the first round. Indiana's only lost to the 2 teams the championship game. Perspective matters. That is true.
Can you?
Why Notre Dame wins? Well, don't play it until don't even put it up there because we're just going to end the show on it. Why Notre Dame wins? Riley Leonard plays like he did Labor Day night 2023, and Ryan Day melts down like Dabo Swinney and 2 fumbles inside the 5. All right, here we go. We'll catch you next time here on the Crowded Booth. Welcome in, everybody. It's just, God, it's awesome. It's awesome. We'll see you later. I mean, there's not much more to say. Appreciate you tuning in.